I think this is the most disappointing episode of Mega Voltage thus far. Does this perhaps sound familiar? Well, it's because this is how I opened my review for episode 98. Which of course featured Liko versus Katy, the main reason why that episode fell so short for me. I expected so much from this battle given everything it had going for it. From its setup to the characters and tactics involved, it had all the ingredients necessary to be something truly special and magnificent. And yet, it failed miserably due to poor execution because of things like pacing, animation, choreography, etc. This battle stumbled so hard in fact that it made me lose faith in this arc when it comes to battles. And this is where the main difference lies between episode 98 and episode 101. The former was disappointing as it is, but my high expectations for the battle made it even worse. With the latter, however, my expectations for the battle were kept so low and so in check that its failure should have been less painful, and yet it wasn't. Why? Well, because unlike with Liko vs. Katy, which had an emotionally satisfying, narratively appropriate, logically consistent, and acceptable outcome that ultimately made such a lackluster battle a little more tolerable, Roy vs. Nemona had an outcome that is not so easy to accept. Like, don't get me wrong, Roy winning is a good thing. It's probably what most, if not all of us wanted to see. Especially since, like Liko, he gets to defeat an opponent he's lost to before. So he also gets to redeem himself and show off how much he's grown, how far he's come. The problem is that Liko's opponent was a gym leader, while Roy's opponent is a champion, which is on a whole other level. So his victory is also emotionally satisfying and narratively appropriate. But it is certainly not logically consistent, and whether it's acceptable or not is honestly up for debate. Is Roy stronger, more capable, knowledgeable, and skilled than he's ever been before? Absolutely. But is he at the level where he can defeat a champion one-on-one? Probably not. I mean, this is only episode 101 of this series. Remember how long it took Ash to do the same? A whopping 1,150 episodes. 101 episodes into his journey, Ash was in the middle of his trip through the Orange Islands. Nowhere close to the level of even battling a champion. I mean, he got humbled by an Elite Four member just 2 episodes prior. You seriously expect me to believe and accept that Roy can, in 101 episodes, do something Ash took over 1,000 episodes to do? This is one heck of an ask. Now yes, the previous anime was frozen in time essentially. Ash was 10 permanently, while Horizons had a time skip that allowed Roy to age, mature, and spend a year training. So 101 episodes in, he is likely far better than Ash was in the same amount of episodes, even if admittedly it doesn't really feel this way. But surely, Roy is still not strong enough to defeat a champion. And yeah, this was already a problem before in Horizons, considering Roy also defeated Jita back in episode 79. So he defeated a champion even earlier, but at least with Jita you could somewhat excuse it because he wasn't alone. Liko and Dot battled alongside him, and even then, I heavily criticized that they were allowed to defeat a champion so early in their journey. Now you could argue that Nemona wasn't really playing for keeps. I mean, she says she did her best, but did she really? Considering that in the games, she nerfs herself to avoid absolutely demolishing the player character by using Pokemon that are not her mains. Who's to say she doesn't have stronger Pokemon in the anime too? You know, her actual champion team. There's also the fact that this being just a friendly battle means that it does not carry any official meaning or weight. It doesn't really change anything. It's not like Roy is a champion now, and the low stakes adds credence to the fact that perhaps Nemona didn't actually go all out, even if she's not the type to hold back. But even with all these concessions in mind, this result is one I have a lot of trouble accepting, especially since Nemona so easily accepts her defeat. Not that I wanted her to throw a stomping tantrum or anything, but seeing her just laugh it off does rub salt in the wound. Like, this isn't a big deal. It's perfectly normal and acceptable. Nothing to it, so just move on. Liko catching a legendary, Roy doing the same unofficially, both them and Dot defeating a champion, and now Roy defeating a champion solo, all point towards an apparent conscious decision from the writers to be more lax compared to how they were before with regards to what main characters in this anime can and cannot accomplish. This series seems to be a lot more generous and permissive with main characters, allowing them to do more than Ash and faster, which does feel unfair at times. It feels like Liko and friends are just being gifted certain monumental accomplishments, and like the balance of power scaling suddenly doesn't matter at times, and like plot armor is very much a thing. Now yes, I understand this series is different from those that came before in many ways. Moreover, this is likely just how I feel. I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter in the comments below. Now beyond the outcome, the battle was, like I alluded to earlier, just as bad and disappointing as Liko versus Katy. Admittedly, the animation is a little better here. There are a few moments I can genuinely praise, like Mega Lucario and the Terrapamot clashing with close combat and Mach Punch. You know I love me some Dragon Ball Z style battles. Plus, this exchange might be the only part of the battle that feels impactful, intense, and fast-paced. But unfortunately, this is the exception rather than the rule. The rest of the battle is plagued by most of the same issues as Liko versus Katy. Namely, stiff and lackluster animation that feels weightless and slow, sluggish pacing. The former is exemplified best by Pamot slowly using Focus Punch to lightly tap both Lucario and Crocalor, who proceed to be knocked back with way too much force, which happens because bafflingly they just stand there in shock without trying to do anything to defend themselves, and by Lucario and Pamot clashing with Close Combat and Mach Punch the first time, which has them both literally hovering in midair. Like, how? Are they maintaining altitude by flailing their legs? This makes no sense, and it looks quite silly, goofy, and unrealistic. Meanwhile, the latter is exemplified by, well, most of the battle. I've said this before, but I can quite literally count the frames. Even Roy and Nemona move at a painfully lethargic pace when they command their Pokemon. There are also several instances like this that are supposed to feature motion, but instead look like still shots made to look like they are moving. Not to mention the many moments of extremely drawn out reactions and wind up before doing anything. I get that Pamut is using Focus Punch, which needs to be charged up, but come on, this is just ridiculous. And speaking of things that don't make sense, the battle also has logical inconsistencies that make it even harder to take seriously. Most glaringly, there's this strange moment where Crocalor eats an offensive pollen puff for the first time and blows up like he's in an episode of Tom and Jerry, only for him to later eat multiple offensive pollen puffs and suffer zero visible damage. Now sure, the first time he was caught off guard, while the second time he knew what to expect and likely used his flames to counter them, but this still feels like a stretch. It's inconsistent. I also have to question why even have a double battle in the first place if the battle ends when just one Pokemon from either side is knocked out. Doesn't this completely defeat the purpose of a double battle? Like, instead of encouraging longer, more tactical engagements, it reduces the double battle to a glorified coin toss. Now, I'm pretty sure they did this back in episodes 55 and 56 as well, but back then, only the Elite Four were handicapped. This was meant to give the student and gym leader duos a fighting chance. But here, since both sides have the same handicap, it's not really a handicap. If this rule applied to Nemona only, then it would make sense. Not that this would fully alleviate the problems with having Roy defeat her, but it would have helped. So why have this rule if it serves no purpose other than making a double battle feel pointless? Well, it certainly allows the battle to be shorter and thus easier, cheaper, and faster to make. Which, as you'll see, might be intentional. It also allows them to better sandwich the battle between all the filler that is most of the rest of the episode. Ultimately, Roy vs. Nemona embodies everything wrong with battles in this arc. From animation to choreography, trainer versus trainer battles have suffered a noticeable downgrade in Mega Voltage. I cannot help but wonder, what happened? Was there a shakeup at OLM in terms of animation teams? Are key staff members busy on other projects? Is it a case of budget constraints or time limitations? Or, and I hate to say this, is it just a matter of effort? Whatever the reason, there's a clear dip in quality, and it's cause for concern. If things continue at this level, I worry that the most climactic battles in this arc will lack the impact they should rightfully have. Now, moving on from the battle, this episode also sees the return of Jita, Clavel, Dendra, Jack, and Penny. Unfortunately, most of them, save for Penny, are reduced to little more than background characters. Jita and Clavel affirm their trust in the Rising Bolt Tacklers, which is nice until they immediately undercut that trust by insisting they need more concrete data before they can take any meaningful action. So basically, we believe you, but not enough to do anything about it. Now, I get it. They represent an institution, and due diligence is important. But still, the juxtaposition between what they say and what they do feels a bit disingenuous. Worse still, Liko and friends spend much of this section recapping information we already know because we watched the previous episodes. Jack's presence, while appreciated, ultimately amounts to empty promises. He's willing to collaborate and contribute his knowledge of Pokemon biology. But as of this episode, there's little he can actually do, and he doesn't provide any valuable insight. Plus, enlisting his help requires even more recap, which is just wonderful, right? So most of the episode offers us a whole lot of nothing, both in terms of plot advancement and character development. Even Dendra's subplot, while amusing in how she aggressively chases and captures Uruto after mistaking him for a trespasser, is pure filler. Fun? Sure, but relevant? Not really. Penny, however, stands apart from the others. Not only does she provide something genuinely useful, a compiled map of Lacueum signs scattered across Paldea, which I'm sure will be relevant for several episodes to come, but she also reinforces her dynamic with Dot. As fellow introverted, tech-savvy girls, the two have a natural chemistry, and it's great to see that play out again here. So Penny is the only one that actually offers something valuable, which is why she ends up being the most meaningful of all the returning characters. She even challenges Dot to a battle after seeing how thrilled she was after Roy's match. It's a cool and surprising moment that sets up the next episode. Finally, the episode ends with Onya and the Cirque out at sea searching for Amegio. While they haven't found him yet, we can see that they are looking like Hamber told them to several episodes ago. Onya holding the Zygarde cube and praying for guidance from the Order Pokémon is a clear sign that Zygarde could re-enter the story soon, which is great. This is a promising way to close out an otherwise flawed and uneven episode. Lastly, I do want to mention, first, that the opening is updated visually starting with this episode. Liko and friends now have the rest of the Rising Bolt tacklers standing behind them, including Fried, who is farther back to symbolize that he is supporting them from afar. This is a wonderful change that highlights and emphasizes how the story changed significantly in the previous episode. Second, speaking of the story changing significantly in the previous episode, seeing Roy drive the Brave Olivine with Murdoch's guidance beautifully reinforces what I said in my review of the previous episode. That Liko and friends are now the ones leading the charge and choosing the path they traverse, with the adults providing advice and support instead of leadership. And the third, Uruto's vehicle sickness returns in this episode, which is kind of funny, and I love that he declines having an actual room on the airship, choosing instead to call the observatory home like Diana did. A nice callback. Also, his aversion to women crops up again in this episode. Curiously though, this time only with Jita. He seems to be perfectly fine with Nemona, Dendra, and Penny. So I guess not every woman triggers him. In fact, come to think of it, he was seemingly fine with Karna too in the previous 2 episodes, but not with Orla. I wonder what's the pattern here. So, overall, this episode was horrible. It's one of the worst episodes of Mega Voltage thus far, if not the worst. And that's incredibly disappointing considering everything it had lined up. On paper, it promised a lot. A long-awaited rematch between Roy and Nemona, the presumably impactful return of key characters, and potential new leads on Lacueum. But in practice, it stumbles at nearly every turn. The battle, the clear centerpiece, falls incredibly short due to inconsistent logic, poor animation, and sluggish pacing. The stakes felt hollow, and the result, while perhaps narratively meaningful and what we wanted to see, stretches credibility to its limits. The return of so many characters from Paldea should have been a highlight, yet most of them are wasted on exposition and empty promises, or nearly sidelined entirely. The first half of the episode ends up feeling like filler disguised as progress. That said, there are bright spots. Penny's contributions are legitimately valuable, and her bond with Dot continues to be one of the most rewarding dynamics in the series. And the end of the episode quietly builds towards something potentially great. But ultimately, one or two decent subplots cannot save what is otherwise a deeply flawed, disappointing, and frustrating episode. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, feel free to click the links on screen. And if you'd like to support the channel and help me keep making content like this, you can find all the ways to do so in the description and in the pinned comment. Whether it's through a small donation or just watching and sharing, every bit of support means the world to me. Thank you so very much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.